What's up, Photoshop world people? If you're watching this, you're one of the most dedicated learners in the world, and I'm not kidding. Thank you so much for joining into this video. And today we're gonna go through all of the tips and tricks that we covered in the class. I know I'm speaking of in future, in the past. I know that sounds crazy, but let's go through each of them. And if you saw them in order or something in the class, and right now it's not in order, it just means that I worked too hard to get them in order. But if you see him exactly the way it is, I was too lazy. Anyway, let's jump straight in. Alright, so first of all, let's talk about these two things. Two magic controls. So there are two controls in Photoshop that really help you either increase the resolution of a graphic or make selections better. And those two magic controls are blur and contrast. So keep them in mind, blur and contrast. So let's go through it. So I'm going to open the start one, and I already have made the downloadable files where you can find a start PSD where you can start working on, and a finished PSD for referenced where everything is already done. Okay, so both the PSDs, so you can follow along and you can compare your results with the final results, and maybe you'll come up with something better. And of course, you should come up with better always. I'm a very poor Photoshop guy. Alright, now let's have a look at this graphic. It's a bit, pixelated, doesn't look right, not very sharp. So, but it has enough details, right? Enough details to recover it, to recreate it, right? So the long process would be using the pen tool and all that stuff, but there's a short process. And the process is very interesting. Let me take you through that. Alright, so first of all, your image should have black and white. First of all, it should have two colors. Just two colors. Second of all, it should be black and white. If it's not black and white, if it's yellow and red, something like that, you can use curves and black and white adjustment layer to make it black and white. Make sure they are, first of all, black and white. Then what you can do, make sure it's not in a transparent layer as it is right here. It's with the white. So add a white background or add a solid color adjustment layer and then merge both of them. So I selected both of them. By selecting one, hold the Control or Command, select the other, press Control or Command E. That merges them. Okay, now here's the magic. If you want it to be non-destructive, here's what you need to do. Just unlock this. If this is locked, just unlock this by clicking in right here. This unlocks it. Okay, now what we need to do, it's simple. Convert this into a smart object. Go to Filter, Convert for Smart Filters. That way, we can apply blur to this. And we want to be able to change the values of that later. So, convert it for Smart Filters. That means we are going to convert this into a smart object. Even if you right-click here and choose Smart Object, Convert to Smart Object, it does exactly the same thing. Alright, now what we have to do, go to Filter, Blur, and then Gaussian Blur. Increase the blur to the point where everything seems to be, what should I call it? Everything seems so smooth and nice, and the circles become circles, so seamless, alright? So at this point, I see bumps in the circle. That's not a good number. We'll go ahead and increase this, we'll increase it. At this point, everything seems to be circle. Maybe let's go ahead and increase it even more to like 10, that's fine, hit OK. Keep in mind, we can change the value later and I'll show you the magic. Now, let's go ahead and add a curves adjustment layer. By adding curves, we're going to make the gray closer to the white, whiter, brighter, and we're going to make the grays closer to the black, darker. That way, we will have a defined edge. See? Now we'll take this slider from the right to the left. There you go. You see the defined edge? The more we take the sliders closer, the more defined the edges are. Okay, now zoom out and have a look. Doesn't that look wonderful? Now at any point you can double click on the Gaussian blur. Now here's the magic. The curves has been applied. Now anytime you can just open up the Gaussian blur and try in different values of the radius. If we had chosen 4.9, this would have been the result. Now we can go back and check which values work best for us. Result 0.1, no effect. Keep on increasing, keep on increasing, keep on increasing. You see, if you increase too much, you're gonna have nothing. It's crazy. So you can also keep on decreasing it from a number to see what works for you the best. So the higher the radius, the more smoother it will be. But if you go too smooth, you see that happens. We don't want that to happen. Okay, so we want something around that looks pretty cool. You can increase it if you want to and hit OK. You can bring the sliders even more closer for a more harsher outline, and there you go. See how easily we have increased the resolution. No matter how big you make it, it's going to be very good. So even if you like go to edit, image size, where is image size? I think it's in image. I'm so sorry about that. So you can go to image size. I don't know what's happening with me today. You can go 4000, okay, and hit OK and have a look. Even at 4000, it's amazing. So that's a great way to increase the resolution of a graphic which has like 2 colors. So you can, at this point it has some bumps, right? So what I'll do, I'll increase the what do you call it, Gaussian blur a little more. Okay, it looks much better now. Have a look. Wonderful, isn't it? All right, I'll bring the sliders a little more closer like that. Okay, there we go. Isn't that amazing? Now, since it deals with black and white, we can also use it for selections and masking, because when we make masks, what do we have in the mask? Black and white. So white determines what has been selected, black determines which has not been selected, right? Now, by the way, if you want to learn how to save it, or if you want to create a file or transparent stuff out of it, I'm just taking a little longer here because in class we have a limited time. Here we have a lot of time. You can just skip the video, do whatever you want. All right, so what we can do, we can create a stamp visible layer. To do that, press Ctrl, Alt, Shift and E. Okay, now we have all of this sharp image on a separate layer. All right, now you can go to select, color range. You can choose shadows. Okay, if you want to select the blacks. Selection preview, you can choose none, or you can choose grayscale. White are the areas which have been selected. Decrease the fuzziness to 0 and play with the range. Yeah, that's fine. If you want to soften the edges a little bit, you can increase the fuzziness, and that looks pretty awesome. Hit OK. Now we have that area selected, and then the best thing to do is to create a new layer. Of course, you could have selected it out from here and deleted the white areas, but the best thing is to create a new layer and fill it with black or whatever color you would like. If you want to create a white logo or something, white or black or whatever you like. So I'm going to fill it with black, so I will make sure that the foreground color is black. By pressing X, you can switch between the foreground and the background, and D resets the swatches. Black, Alt, backspace, or Option delete on a Mac, Alt backspace on Windows. So we have it on a transparent layer. So now we can just throw it in the dustbin. Control or Command D to deselect that. We have this transparent. Isn't that amazing? Now you can save that as a PNG and use it. File, export as PNG or save as PNG. You know the stuff. All right, so let's go ahead and close it. We don't need it. Okay, let's look at some more examples. Let's look at this example. Okay, suppose I want to select this origami butterfly. Maybe it's a butterfly. All right, whatever it is, I want to select it. So we're going to choose the quick selection tool. All right, it's easier. You already know this, that it's easier to select the background because it's seamless and completely white than selecting the butterfly. So just select the background, as easy as that. Now let's create a mask. But before we create a mask, we have selected the background. We have to invert the selection to select this origami stuff. All right, so we will press Control Shift I, Command Shift I on a Mac. Or you could have simply gone to select an inverse. It does the same thing, it inverts the selection. All right, now we're gonna press this mask button. Now we have a mask. Now suppose you wanted to change the background and you changed it to let's say black, so that you can see the mistakes more clearly. And let's take it down. Have a look, the edges are jagged, it just doesn't look right. So there are two things that you can do. Number one, you can select the mask, go to Filter, Blur, Gaussian blur, okay? And do the same thing. Add that kind of blur which makes everything seem smooth. So for me, I'm gonna go for, let's say, 14-ish, hit OK. And then we would do the same. We would go to Image, Adjustments, and there we have curves. Okay, we cannot add a adjustment layer here because that would affect the layer instead of the mask. And then we can do the same thing, take it from the left, take it from the right. You see, So cool, right? There you go. Isn't that an amazing selection? The other thing that of course, you have a little problem right here at the back, at the behind of the butterfly, but we can correct that, no problem. And the second thing that we can do, let's go back again, is selecting this, and let's go to select and mask. Make sure any of the selection tool is selected. That just doesn't matter which one, just make sure a selection tool is selected, and then we will go to select and mask. And inside of select and mask, it's all very simple. All you have to do the same thing. You increase the feather to make it smooth, and then increase the contrast. Boom, kaboom, done. And once you're ready, you would hit OK. And there we have the smooth selection. Now, if you want, you can just correct this simply with a brush. You can take a brush, make sure it's small enough. I have it too big. Make sure it's small enough, make sure it's soft enough, like that. Okay. And then paint it with black, just like this. Maybe make it a little more softer. Okay. I'll just click one here. Here's one more tip. Click once, hold the shift key, click on the other side. Okay. Click once, hold the shift key, click on the other side. Okay. Similarly with white, click once, hold the shift key, click on the other side. Whoa, that kind of didn't get it right. Do the same thing here as well. And there you have it covered. All right. So that's how to make the selection a lot more sharper. There you go. So those are the two controls, two magic controls, blur and second one is contrast. So you can add contrast in a ton of ways. We did it by using curves. You can simply add a contrast, but don't use just contrast. Use curves to increase the contrast. Remember, what is contrast? It's making the brights brighter and making the darks darker. That's all there is. Okay, so blur can also be feather. Feather does the same thing. So yeah, it's basically the same thing. Always keep in mind the concepts. Let's go over the second thing, and that is blend if. One of my favorite things to do in Photoshop. Blend if is the thing. So let's start with blend if by opening the first example. I know if you've noticed, there's a sudden jump in time because I cannot record it in one go. I'm a busy person, or maybe a lazy, I just dozed off. All right, so let's open that up. Example number 1, and let's understand how the blend if works. So it's the most important thing to understand the concepts first. That way you can come up with your own tips, right? So learning the concept is more essential than learning how to do this or that. Learn the concepts. All right. So first off, let's understand what the heck is blend if. Well, blend if is hiding and showing stuff based on brightness levels. Now the question is, whose brightness levels? Let me show that to you. So if I double click on the right hand side of this layer, this opens up a layer styles dialog box. Okay. Now inside of the layer styles, there's this section called blend if. Okay, right? Keep in mind that in this layer we have a normal sphere, and in this layer we have a gradient from black to white. Let me just show that to you. So this is a gradient from black to white. Okay, you would agree that this area is dark and this area is bright. At the same time, if I turn on the sphere, this area is bright and this area is dark. Clear? All right. Now just double click on the right hand side of the layer. Also, what you can do, you can just right click here and choose blending options. Both show the exact same thing. Now inside of blend if, there you see the blend if section. If you take the slider of this layer from right to left, see what's happening. And if you take the left slider, see what happens. Can you identify what just happens? Well, let's just make it clear. Let me just work on the second one, the underlying layer. See what happens. Let me work on the right hand side. You see, isn't that interesting? So what's happening here is that whatever happens, the hiding and showing up of areas happens in the current layer, which is sphere, the layer in which that you're working on. However, the source can be determined from the current layer or the layers which are beneath it. Make sense? So if you want to hide the bright areas of this layer, which is the sphere. If you want to hide the bright areas of the sphere from the sphere, then you would take the slider on the right, which shows white and bright. The left side is black and dark to the left. Okay, just like that. It hides the bright areas of the sphere from the sphere. It's always from the sphere because that layer is selected. However, if you go to the underlying layer, if you take this down, the bright areas of the underlying layers, or the layers which are lying under it, like the gradient and the background, so they both combine. If you merge them, the result that. So if you take this to the left, the bright areas of the underlying layer, which is gradient from black and white, from the sphere gets hidden. Okay, same happens with the dark side. So dark side of the underlying layer, dark side of this current layer from this layer, dark side of the underlying layer from this layer. Makes sense? Now sometimes you don't want it so harsh. So if you're doing something like this, you don't want this to be so harsh, right? The selection is very harsh. If you want to have a soft transition between the area that is hidden and the area that is not hidden, you would hold the Alt key, click on the slider, it breaks up the slider. Then you would set it apart just like that, and there you have a soft transition. Make sense? Alright, I hope it made sense. Now once you have done all of that, hit OK. Okay. And keep in mind that this can be changed after the fact. So you would double click here and you would see the same thing right here. It's not burned into it. Keep that in mind. Alright, so let's open up our examples and let's learn it through example. Example is not the best way to learn the things, it's the only way. Alright, so let's open up the first start example. Okay, there's always this finished PSD available. So in the background we have the sky, right, as a layer, and the top we have this Eiffel Tower with the blue sky. Suppose you want to replace the sky. So what is the sky? Let's talk about that. The sky is blue, right, and it is white. Sorry, bright. I just messed it up. So we want to remove the blues from the bright areas. You're breaking it down, right? Reverse engineering. We want to remove blue from the bright areas, right? We want to remove blue from the highlights. So double click on the right hand side. Now, here's an interesting thing. Let me just volume down it a little bit. Not just the bright and dark levels of RGB combined channel, but you can work on other channels as well. Isn't that so cool? So you can go to blues and take away the blues from the highlights. Wow, have a look at this. Now, there's a little bit element of blue in Eiffel Tower as well. So if you go to left, see, that's also being hidden. So we need to control that. We cannot go to left. So we have to zoom in and see which works in for us. Yep. This value is great, but then again, the top is not hidden yet. So I'll go a little bit to the left and maybe keep it at that because that can be masked out. It's easy. Masking out the areas around it would have been very difficult, but it's very harsh. So we would hold the Alt or Option, click on this thing, and I want to take it right there, just like so. And it works pretty good. Yeah, it works. So I want to take it to the left. Yeah, it kind of works. Now once you're satisfied with it, you would hit OK. Now there's a couple of areas which are left out at the top to be removed. So we will create a mask. You already know that. You'll take the brush, make the brush a little bigger, make it a little softer, and then make sure the foreground color is black. So I just pressed X to toggle between the foreground and the background, and keep in mind always, black hides, white shows up. So in the mask, if you paint in black, that area goes hidden. Alright, so I'm just gonna hide up a couple areas right here like that. And it looks interesting. There we go. But however, there was a lot of blues in here as well, and those also get removed. So we want them back. How do we get them back? Simple. Make a copy of the Eiffel Tower layer. Press Ctrl or Command J. Delete the mask. We'll create a new mask. We don't need it. Just select the mask, delete it. Apply mask. No, we don't want to apply it. Just delete it. Okay. Double click on the right hand side of the layer. Get everything back. I mean, you should have made 2 copies earlier, but that makes sense. Now, what I want you to do, I want you to hold the Alt key or the Option key and click on the mask button. That creates a negative mask, black mask, which means nothing is visible. Now, we will make areas like this visible. We'll simply take a brush, make sure it's soft, make sure the foreground color is white. We're making stuff visible and simply paint on these areas. You don't have to be like super accurate. Make the brush a little bigger, make sure it's soft, and just paint in there. And if you want to be super careful, and do take your time, there you go. It's done, right? Isn't that amazing? So quickly we can replace the sky. And there we go. Let's just close it. We don't need it. All right, let's go over the second one. Example number 3. There we go. In this, I did the same thing. I did replace the sky and made some of the stuff visible. Okay, so there we go. We added the mask as we did previously, and it's all the same. However, if you look at the previous version, if you look at the before, here's the before, and here's the after. The sky is not matching, right? So we can add an adjustment layer just above the sky. So make sure the sky layer is selected, and just above it, we're going to create an adjustment layer. All right, so click on the adjustment layer icon. Let's choose hue saturation because we want to match the hue saturation stuff. So how about taking the hue a little bit to the right, making it a little more bluer? But it's too blue. We're going to take the saturation a little bit to the left, just like that. And it actually looks amazing. So here's the before, not matched. And here's the after. Now it's matching much more. You see, these colors should match with that of the, what do you call that? Mountain or hill? After a certain height, you call that a mountain. I know that, but I think it's a hill. Anyway, whatever it is. So I'm going to decrease the saturation. Maybe I'm going to match it with that thing right there. Yeah, it kind of is around 12 and minus 39. It matches. All right. Pretty much good. So that's what I wanted to talk to you about. Sometimes you're going to match the sky, the color and stuff as well. So let's go ahead and open up the next example. And I'm not sure whether I'll be covering all the examples in the class, but I want to make sure that everything is in there in the recording. So you can use Blend Diff to apply a plethora of effects. I mean, it's limitless. The sky is the limit. I mean, the space is the limit. That would be better. Anyway, so let's go ahead and create a solid color adjustment layer. And for the shadows, I want the shadows to be a little blue. So I'm going to go ahead and choose some dark bluish color. And for the highlights, I want it to be a little yellowish. So I'm going to go and choose solid color and choose something like this warm yellow. So what do we do now? We just hide the yellow for now. Come back to this, double click on the right hand side of the layer. We just want to keep it in the shadows. So underlying layer, we're going to take it away. It's very harsh. Hold the Alt key or the Option key, click on in here, and take it all the way to the left. See how it looks? Alright, look pretty good. Hit OK. And this is too much. We're going to decrease the opacity. I'm going to keep it at that. Now that looks very cinematic. Let's turn this on and do the same thing, but we'll do just the opposite. Hold the Alt key or the Option key, click on in here, and there we go. Yeah, it looks very interesting. But then again, it's very harsh. So let's decrease the opacity. And you can also just scrub over the text. Yeah, just a little bit, something like that. And it looks interesting. Have a look before, after. Whoops, after, before, after. All right. So that is that about cinematic effect using Blend If. All right. So let's go ahead and open up our next example. This is example 4. I should have, there's a mistake in numbering. I'll just correct it in the class. All right, so I'll just start in there. Okay, so Blend If can also be used to remove harsh shadows. And this is really interesting. So have a look at this. It has a lot of harsh shadows in there. So what you can do, you can add a Blend If, add a curves adjustment layer. Brighten that up, and we just want to limit this brightening to the shadows. So we'll just double click on the right hand side of the layer, and we want to take this brightening away from the bright areas. Take the slider of the right to the left. What are we doing? We are hiding the bright areas of the underlying layer, which is the subject, from the current layer, which is the curves. So just taking it all away. So at this point, the shadows just so, but it's very harsh. It's too harsh. So what we can do, we can just break it down just like that, and it looks much more realistic. Hit OK, and yeah, that looks amazing. Now you can select the mask, Control or Command I, and just paint on the areas where you need the details back in. So I'll just make sure the foreground color is white. I'll just simply paint on areas like that. And you can just determine which areas you want to paint and go forward with that. I just did a very quick job. You can take your time and do it. So here's the before, here's the after. Isn't that amazing? Now, at this point, you can just decrease it or increase it, do whatever you want. That's totally upon you. Let's go over the next example. You can also make the skies really, really dramatic. Let's close it. Using Blend If as well. So what are you going to do? Let me just do it. So, create a new layer. Okay. Take the brush. You're going to sample a color. Before we sample a color, make sure the eyedropper tool, it's not point sample. It's something like 5 by 5, 11 by 11, depending upon the resolution of your image. The higher the resolution, the higher you would go. What that does is that you need to understand the concept again. Instead of sampling from a point or a pixel, if you choose point sample, it just samples from a pixel right there. So if I zoom in, you cannot see a pixel because I turned off pixel grid. So I'm going to just turn on the pixel grid right here. Okay, so you see this pixel grid, that's 1 pixel. So if you take the eyedropper tool and sample, it's going to sample from that 1 square box. If you choose something like 11 by 11, it makes a big box of 11 pixels by 11 pixels and takes an average of all of those. It's much better because you don't want to sample a noise or an unpleasant area. So make sure you have chosen something like that, and then you come back to the brush, you hold the Alt key or the Option key, and you sample that color. Now once you sample that color, it's going to be right here. So you're just going to open it, and maybe you want to darken it a little bit. Select B, it stands for brightness. You're going to darken it a little bit. Maybe change the hue, saturation. S stands for saturation. We'll make it a little saturated. Come to H, I don't know how you pronounce that. English is my third language. I'm sorry about that. So hit OK, and just simply paint. Just start painting, right? So just zoom in and just start painting right here, right there, or just start painting. You can also change colors if you like. So I'm going to make it a little bit that colorish, and let's make the brush a little bigger and do something like that. Okay, that is interesting. Double click on the right hand side of the layer. All right. Now once we do that, we will take away the bright areas just like so. Isn't that very, very interesting? But it looks bad. Sometimes I say it's interesting, but it looks really bad. So hold the Alt key or the Option key, click on this thing, and kind of break it like that. Yeah, I kind of love it. Right? Maybe I'll keep it at that. I mean, play with it as much as you like. Hit OK. So have a look at the before and after. So here's the before, here's the after. The sky looks dramatic, but the mountains look really bad. So we're going to create a mask, and let's just erase the mountains. Make sure the foreground color is black. And again, you don't have to be super accurate here. Just okay. Maybe you want to be accurate at this area. Okay, there we go. It looks good. And if you want, you can take the brush, come back into the layer, and paint a little bit here as well. Maybe we can do that in a separate layer. The blend if settings might be different for that area. So maybe paint it a little bit there. Double click on the right hand side of the layer. Yeah, that is great for that area. And there we go. Now at this point, you can just control the opacity because I think it's too much. We're going to just keep it at 57. And for this one, we're going to keep it something like that. So have a look. Here's the before, here's the after. How easily we have increased the details in the sky. Now you can paint in any color to make it more interesting. And that kind of wraps up our blend if stuff. So let's go ahead and close that. It wraps it up probably. It kind of wraps it up. Now let's talk about our next thing. That is the content aware scale. So content aware scale is a great tool for you to be able to stretch the background without the subject being affected. However, it has its own limitations. Today we're going to trick Photoshop into breaking those limitations. So let's open up the first example and let's have a look at this photo. I mean, if you want to make a Facebook cover out of it, or if you want to stretch the background for some reason, maybe you want to have a wider image. So instead of just selecting an area and stretching it, what I would say you can do here, make sure first of all you unlock the background layer. You unlock it. If it was a background layer, if you go to layer, let me just turn that to a background layer. Okay, so if it was this way, just click on the lock to unlock it. Now press C for the crop tool. Whatever ratio you want it in, maybe you want to extend it this, or you want to extend it even more. So for example, you want to extend it this way, right? Something like that. And let's make it even more for this example. Okay, now let's make a copy of this layer just for safety purposes. Press Ctrl or Command J, and this is just for safety, all right? So usually what we do, we go to Edit, then Content Aware Scale. And then when you do increase it, see, the subject is not being affected. So what Photoshop does is that it figures out which area has the details and which area is kind of seamless, where we can do a little bit of stretching. So the subject has a lot of details, and that's why it's not stretching it. However, it's stretching the background, but there will be a point where the subject will also be stretched. So let's go back. Let's hit enter and let's go back. Let's do that from scratch. So go to Edit, Content Aware Scale, and keep in mind to stretch from the center. So we'll place it in the center, stretch it, hold the Alt key to stretch it from both sides. See, now the subject is being stretched. We don't want that. So stop right in where the subject starts being stretched. Stop right in there. Hit enter or return. Again, let's turn this off. It's kind of distracting. Again, you would go to Edit, Content Aware Scale, and again you would do it. Photoshop reanalyzes. That's the key. You see, it's being stretched again. You would stop right here. Okay, now you have in mind that you don't want to stretch this area, the left area, it's getting too stretched. So you would keep it there and just want to stretch the right side. Then you would go for making a selection. And again, going to Edit, Content Aware Scale, and this time you don't have to worry about a thing, simply do it. Okay, but I see it's too much, right? Isn't it too much? It is actually too much. So what I would again suggest you to do is to try doing this. Okay, let's try doing this. Let's maybe select till, both of them, and then we'll go to Edit, Content Aware Scale. See what happens. It's better than before. It's not very excellent. See, the subject is being stretched again. So we're gonna stop. We're gonna again apply that. I think that's the most we can stretch. After it kind of starts looking weird. So yeah, we cannot extra stretch it. And let me give you an option. This is a assigned option. This might not be in the class, but you can do this as well. So when this happens, you can select an area like that, okay? Or maybe a shorter area like this, okay? Maybe something like that, right? Put it on its own layer. Press Ctrl or Command J. Now this area is on its own layer. You would drag it and place it in right there. Now it's not matching, but wait, press Ctrl or Command T. Right click and choose Flip Horizontal. See, it's gonna match, but it's gonna look strange. So you would bring it a little bit to the left. It's gonna match pretty well, but it does look very strange. No problem at all. What you do, you select both of them, okay? And then we would merge it. Press Ctrl or Command E, okay? And then we would select that area. And this is just impromptu. This is not prepared, but I just want to, okay? So that area that looks strange, we'll select that. And we'll just try Edit, Fill, Content Aware. Let's see whether that works. And it's doing its math again. It's good here, but maybe we want to edit this area ourselves. So let's choose this spot healing. It's not the spot. What is it? Clone stamp tool. What am I doing? Guys, it's just 5:10 a.m. So I just woke up. Keep that in mind.
So that area is fine. Maybe this is the area that we want to just take a sample and maybe continue it from here. And you get the idea. I mean, I just am too lazy to work on it right now. Alright, something like that. And maybe you want to take a sample and rotate the sample. So if we zoom out, I just want to take a sample and probably I want to rotate the sample. So I would hold the Shift Alt and the left arrow bracket key, the one next to M. Okay, and once you have rotated that, painting, and you can take a sample, paint it from there, and you get the idea. Then you can just kind of extend it nicely. So here's the before. Let me just show that to you, and here's the after. So much extended. Isn't that so cool? All right, so that's some of the tips using the content aware scale. Also, let's open this up. I know there are a lot of other ways, and let me just show that to you. But that just doesn't seem to work. So for this one, the background is pretty well separated, and even if we stretch a lot, it's not gonna affect the bird. So if we go to edit, content aware scale, whoa, you can like really, but since the beak is seamless, have a look, the beak gets stretched after a point. So we're gonna stop in right here, just before the beak gets stretched, and hit enter, and let Photoshop reanalyze that by going to content aware scale again, and this time, wow, it didn't do anything. Isn't that so cool? Now, while you're using content aware, I'm just gonna go back. There are pretty much some options right here to protect the skin tones, but it just doesn't work, right? You can also choose alpha channels, and I have a video about that on my YouTube channel, Hidden Tricks of Content Aware. You can check that out. Okay. So some of them don't work as nice as this tip, which is about stopping in and stretching again. So whenever you think something something unwanted is being stretched, then you would hit enter, do it, and then redo it so that Photoshop reanalyzes that. Okay, so let's close it and let's move over to our next one. And that is curves. Well, if you ask me, curves is the mother of special effects. It's like there's so much you can do with the curves. So first of all, let's understand how the curves work in a very simplifying manner, and then just jump right into the example. All right, so let's have a look at this photo. All right, let's zoom in and have a look at this photo. Let's add a curves adjustment layer, and I would always suggest you to add curves as an adjustment layer. You can add curves in a ton of ways, first off. So let's add an adjustment layer. Click on the adjustment layer icon and add curves. So that way you add it as an adjustment layer. All right. The other way that you can use is that you can select the layer, go to image, adjustments, and then curves. That is also one more way of doing it. All right. But I wouldn't suggest that. The same way, done a little bit differently, is unlocking the background layer. Make sure the layer is unlocked, and then convert this into a smart object. Go to filter, convert for smart filters. That converts this into a smart object. Now this is a smart object. Now again, if you go to image, adjustments, and then curves, you apply something, maybe a little bit of that, hit OK. Have a look. It has been applied as a smart filter, which means that anytime you want to go back, double click on the curves and you can go back to that. Right? It's non-destructive as well. All right. So one of the other things that you can do with it, if you think it's too much, you can double click here and you can decrease the opacity of the curves as well. Isn't that cool? And you can also change the blend mode of the same. So that's another way of doing it. I'm going to delete the smart filters and let's go back to the background layer. All right. Now let's understand curves. First of all, let's create a curves adjustment layer. All right, and let's make it a little bigger so that we can understand it much better. Alrighty. Okay. Now, all you need to keep in mind is the right hand side represents the bright area. Focus on this word, represents, right? Or just represents. The right hand side represents the bright areas and the left hand side represents the dark areas. Okay, now going up makes it brighter, going down makes it darker. To put it in another words, going into this side of the diagonal makes it brighter, going into that side of the diagonal makes it darker. Now that's not representation. For representation, left side is dark, right side is bright. So in the RGB channel, combined red, green and blue channel, if you want to make the bright areas brighter, you would see the representation of bright areas which is on the right. You would make a point, and if you want to make it brighter, what would you do? Go to this diagonal or take it up. There you go. Isn't that exciting? So if you want to make the dark areas darker, where are the dark areas? On the left hand side, right? So click a point on the left hand side, and you want to go into this diagonal, or you want to go down, you would take it down just like that. However, sometimes you want to just delete the points. You'll just drag it all the way to the top, and they're all deleted. Sometimes you never know where this area falls into, which highlight, this highlight, this highlight, or this highlight, or maybe in the dark areas. Where does this area fall into, this bright area of the skin, or this dark area of the skin? At that point of time, you can use something like the hand right here, the hand tool. I like to call it the hand tool. Click on in here, and all you have to do, as you hover over it, it shows you which area it falls under. Isn't that so cool? So you can just click here and drag it up right into the image. Isn't that so cool? Then you want to, for example, darken this area. Just click here and drag it down. Wow. Isn't that amazing? And then you want to brighten the shadows, give it a faded effect. There you go. So easy was that. You don't have to fiddle with this. As you get professional, as you practice, you can directly do it here, but that's one of the great ways. Now, once you do it there in the image, you can always adjust it from here. Nobody's stopping you to do that. You can move things around. You can use that just as a starting point. Okay, and we're gonna do that. Now, if we move to other channels like red, green, and blue, it's like the same thing with a little bit of difference, right? Still, the right hand side represents the bright area, left hand side the dark area. So if you want to increase the reds in the dark areas, increasing the reds, then you would, with the hand tool, and you can do the same thing, click and drag it up. This increases the reds in the dark areas. Okay, and if you want to decrease the reds, then you would do the same, click and drag it down, or same stuff. Okay, all right, decrease the reds, increase the reds. And same with the greens and blues. So let's stylize this photo. Let's reset everything. So if you click here, it resets every single thing. So let's start with the RGB. Let's keep the skin at around that. It looks interesting. Let's make the dark areas a little darker. Give it a punch. There we go. And on the left hand side, just give it a little boost right in there. Right? So you can go to the red channel and kind of, maybe you want to take away the reds from the dark areas a little bit. Maybe these dark areas, you want to bring up the reds in the highlights like that. And maybe in the shadows a little bit of the reds like this. And then let's go to greens. We want to maybe increase the green just a little bit in the highlights and decrease it in the shadows to get that magenta. Wow, I love that magenta. So keep in mind that red, green, and blue is the opposite of cyan, magenta, and yellow. RGB, opposite of CMY. So if you want to increase the cyan, you would decrease the red, because red is the opposite of cyan. If you decrease the red, it increases the cyan. Similarly, if you want to increase the yellows, you would decrease the blues. It becomes totally yellow. So keep that in mind. The opposites, they're important. Okay, so let's go to blues, and maybe we want to increase the blues in the shadows like that. I like that effect. And maybe add a little bit yellow to the highlights. So that's how we have like a little bit stylized our photo. So here's the before, here's the after. There you go, a little bit of stylization. And at any point of time, if you want to decrease the opacity, you can do that as well. So that's one. Let's move over to the second example. You can use curves to easily match the elements of a composite. So here we have a composite. Let's just close it. And we want to match that to the background. So let's have a look at this. Okay, I've actually filled in some of the edges right here. Okay, so here we have a composite. Let me show. Here's the before. Here's the after, just added the composite, just masked it out, the background. So if it came with the background, I kind of just masked it out. You already know the process. Now let's go ahead and add a curves adjustment layer. Now if you add some curves here, what happens is it affects everything, the subject and the background. We don't want that to happen. We just want to affect the subject. So we'll click on this button. It creates a clipping mask, which means that it's limits to the subject, okay, or whatever layer is there underneath it. Now, first of all, we want to match the brightness. So click here and we want to make the bright areas. Bright areas are good. I mean, I kind of like it. Okay. But basically, we want to deal with the dark areas. So we want to make it darker, darker, even more darker to kind of match it. All right, that is cool. Let's keep it at that for this moment. Now, I know it's a bit saturated. Don't worry about that as of now. We can go back. You can add multiple curves adjustment layers. Doesn't really matter. Let's go to reds. Let's try decreasing the reds in the shadows like that. It's matching. It's matching. And let's go to greens. Let's try decreasing the greens. That's matching as well. Let's add a little bit of blues in the, maybe let's take away the blues in the highlights. Now, let's keep it at that for a moment and decrease the saturation. So we would go to hue saturation, clip that as well. It's too much saturated. And it will decrease the saturation to kind of match with that. Okay, that's more matching. That's really good. Now I'll just decrease it even more, something like that, and maybe we'll add one more curves adjustment layer to kind of refine it. The saturation was distracting. Now at this point we can go back to the green and probably increase the magenta. As you can see, there's a lot of magenta in the sky as well, so we can increase the magenta. Just clip it. Don't forget to do that. Okay. And maybe now let's work with reds. Decreasing helps or increasing helps. You figure that out. Okay. So decreasing that doesn't help too much. I'll keep it at that. And blue, increasing helps or decreasing helps. It's a little bit of increasing like that. And you can use the arrow keys to kind of control it. So once you select the point, you can use the up or down arrow keys or right and left arrow keys to control it gradually. Okay. And then again, you can do the RGB stuff, make it even more. So you can literally play with this and you can check out the finished image. I've just already done that. So here's the before, like totally not matching. And then we went in, added something, and it's better than that. Okay. So let me just check. I took some time to do it. So here's what I did after all of that. Now, in a composite, keep in mind that at the end, to make all of this look one and nice, you would have to apply an effect that is applied to both. So I just think it's too dark. I'm going to make it a little brighter. Okay, to both, we would go ahead and add a curves adjustment layer. And we would take it down like that. Yeah, isn't that much better? And then we apply that to both. Now, at any point of time, you can go back and just play with these and see what happens, what looks good to you, and literally go forward from there. Okay, so that's that. Let's move over to the next example. You can always check out the finished image. This looks much better because I took some time to do it. Okay, you can look over the properties there, the settings that have been applied. Now let's move over to the next example, and I've already done it. I just wanted you to have a look. So after a while, when I look at it, it's not matching at all. So let me show you the before. So if I here's the before, I added curves, and see it was too saturated. Took away the saturation and then did all kinds of the same thing, gradient map and all that stuff. This was just for checking purposes, hue saturation. Let's delete that. Okay. All right. So now I think it's too much. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to make it even more darker, especially in the highlights. Okay. And then maybe bring up the shadows a little bit. Okay, great. Now again, I think it's too saturated, so I would go to hue saturation and kind of decrease it. And maybe I think the gradient map is too much, so you can apply a gradient map to add that kind of tone to it. So I'm going to decrease this opacity of that as well, just a little bit, little touch of it. So I would highly suggest that once you edit it, it looks so amazing, and it looked so amazing when I created it. But now when I look back after a while, it looks bad. So it's always essential that before you... I was talking about this to Glenn Lewis just yesterday, that he gave me a very nice advice. He said, that you need to stop. You need to slow down before you post it online, before you get excited and stuff. You need to stop. Just save it and get back at it after, say, a break, a couple of days, and then look at it. That is a very important thing to do. Okay, so let's close that down. I just want to take you through a couple of composites. This is just an example. I just wanted you to have a look. So there you go. So here's the before. I did the same, right? I had applied the curves, applied one more curves. So this curve that I applied, let me just show that to you. So this looks very complex, but it's not. I did all by using the hand tool. This curve was just for brightness. I thought it was too bright, so I added one more. And I hue saturation, decreased the saturation, and added an overall. This is important. This binds everything together. Overall curves adjustment layer to make it all, bring it all together. Okay. All right. Let's close that down. I just wanted to show you that. And this is the starting point of this. So if you want to practice it, so I've also kept in the starting point so that you can just open it up. It's already masked in, so you don't have to do the process and stuff. So you can just go ahead and start right from here, right? So it follows the same steps that we discussed previously, and it is amazing. All right, so let's go to droplets. Now, droplets are one of the most amazing things that I've seen in Photoshop. So if you're into automating, droplets is the thing. If you want to automate stuff, droplet is the thing. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to open up Photoshop, okay? And using droplets, you can like process photos automatically. Not even by opening, you don't even have to open Photoshop. Isn't that so cool? So let me just create it. I'll tell you how to create a droplet first. So open up any image, doesn't matter. I'm just going to open up one image. Okay. So all you have to do is to create an action. And I'm going to be giving you some actions at the end of the class, so you can check out that folder, downloads folder. It's in the same folder. There will be a folder called Photoshop Actions, and you can install them. Okay. But droplets is something you're going to have to create yourself. All right. So first off, let's create an action that you want to do in mass. For example, let's create a simple action called resizing, or maybe adding a watermark to it. Let's keep it both, resizing and adding a watermark. So if you go to the actions, let me just create one more set for this example. These look messy. All right. Okay, so let's create a new folder and let's name it practice. So there we go. Now inside of that, let's record an action. And this action is going to be adding a watermark and doing a... So if you're just resizing, make sure you add one more layer, just a blank layer. While resizing, just doing processes which are in the background layer, just make sure that you add a transparent layer. So if you want to know more about it, I actually already have a tutorial on droplets. So if you go to my YouTube channel, Pix Imperfect, Piximperfect, and there if you just search droplet, you will find it. So that's more in depth, but I'm going to quickly go through that. For example, let's go ahead and create a new action by clicking in here, and let's name it resize and preview. Okay. All right. And we want to keep it at practice set that we just created and hit record. So now it starts recording. Photoshop acts like a tape recorder. Everything we do will be recorded. Now what we want to do, we want to resize it. We're going to go image size. Say we want to resize it to 1500 width pixels. So, and make sure it's linked up so that it doesn't stretch it. Hit OK. Okay, that resizing is saved right there. Now file, place embedded. I think in desktop I have keep it all the times. If you're using that droplet or the action, keep it all the time in the same location. I think there's a preview. Okay, there we go. I'm gonna place it and hit enter. See, it's placed. Now we will decrease the opacity to around 20%. Okay, and before you stop the recording of the action, you want to do this. Go to File, Save As, and you want to make sure that you choose JPEG and you save it somewhere. Doesn't matter where you save it, maybe in the desktop, whatever, you can name it, do whatever you want, doesn't really matter. Just make sure you save it as a JPEG, and you would just click on save. Cool. All right, works. You can choose the quality, whatever you like. I'm going to keep it at 8. Hit OK. Now it is saved. I'm going to hit the stop button, just like that. Okay. Now, file, and this is the most interesting part, automate, and then create droplet. So click on that thing. And where do you want to save the droplet? So I'm going to save it in the same folder. I have this live class folder, and inside are droplets. I want to save it right here. So I'm going to name it photography preview 1500 pixels. I already named it. You can name it again if you want to. So let's name it preview 1500 because it's 1500 in width, and I'm going to save it at that. Set practice, the one that we just created, action, resize and preview. See this action that we just created, resize and preview. Amazing. Keep these all unchecked except for include all subfolders. What it does is that when you drag and drop in a folder over a droplet, then it would also include all the subfolders inside of that folders. So destination, where do you want to save all the images? We want to save it in a folder, and you can choose the destination, and I'm going to choose C live class and droplets as well. Let's create a new folder, called it photography preview 1500, and let's save it inside of this. Let's select the folder, and we have chosen the folder. What we can do is that we can determine what the image will be named as. So how would it look like? So here's an example. So the first part of the image would be named with the document name, whatever the image name was already. The second part, we can keep it preview, or let's say with an underscore so that it has that gap again. And then we have the extension, so we can choose that as an extension. Okay, so that's how it's going to be saved. Here it says GIF or GIF, however you pronounce it, but this is just an example. We're going to save it as JPEG. Okay, it's okay. All right, now this is important, compatibility. Windows, Mac, Unix. So if you're in Mac, and if you also want to save it as Windows, you would check Windows if you're in Windows. And if you also want to save as Mac format, you would check Mac as well. And Unix, I don't know who uses it. Anyway, so make sure you just check in override save as command. This is the most important thing. You need to keep that checked in. If you check it off, now if you check it again, it will show you something which I want it to show that to you. All right, so it says when this option is on, files will be saved to the destination folder only by save as steps in the action. If there's no save or save as steps, no files will be saved. So we want to use the save as in the action because we have very clearly specified everything. That we want to save it as a JPEG, this quality and stuff. So we want to use it from the action. So that's why we will check it in. And we will hit OK. That creates the droplet. Now I wanted to show you the magic of droplets. Let's go back to droplets. Here we have the droplet file. Let's make things a little huge. We'll go to view and make the icons large. Okay. Now there's this image set, these 5 images. All you have to do, drag this folder and drop it over there. It opens up Photoshop automatically. Even if Photoshop is closed, it opens them up automatically and begins to process all of them. Just as we said, applied 1500 and then saves it all in here with 1500 width and the preview right there. How cool is that? And even if you want to check it, let's check it. Go to properties, let's check it. As you can see, if you go over the details, you see 1500, right? Each one of them is 1500 in width. Isn't that so cool? Now, so that's all droplets. All you have to do, keep them in areas like desktop. For example, I have created something for Facebook. So I've created a Facebook upload, which resizes for Facebook and does all that stuff, applies a little contrast. So whenever I want to upload something to Facebook from my computer, I'll just drag it and drop it into this. It automatically processes that and I'll upload that to Facebook. I don't have to go through the whole process of opening Photoshop and even if it's an action, playing the action, go to file, save as, and all that stuff, it saves you a lot of time. All right, let's talk about faux text. And I've been told that it's pronounced faux. I used to say fox, but it's not. It's a French word, I guess. I'm not sure. Correct me if I'm wrong. So let's open this thing up. It's already a finished version, so we're gonna open this thing up. Suppose you want to add text to it. Okay, let's go ahead and add some text. And let's make the text white. Let's add, say, I'm gonna choose a font called Babus. It's one of my favorite fonts. Bold. Okay, there you go. And let's add something called bold and beautiful. All right, cool. I know you need to be an and to figure out what's written there, but then again, let's make it bigger. So, whoops, it's so small that I'm grabbing the wrong handle. So I'm gonna grab this handle, make it bigger, hold the shift key to make it bigger in proportions. I hope I didn't mess up the spelling. And there we go. All right, let's place it in the center. Looks great. But I wanted it to be a little bit slanted and have that, action movie kind of look to the font. But the problem is if you just double click on the T to select the font, there's no italic in there, right? There's no italic. However, there's a tool in Photoshop that allows you, there's a feature that allows you to simulate that. And here's how you can do it. Make sure the text layer is selected, all right? Just the text layer. Doesn't matter if you have selected the text like that or not, doesn't matter. Just make sure the text layer is selected. Or if you just want to affect an area, you would select that. But we want to affect all of it. So we'll select the text layer and then make sure the T is selected and then click on in here at the top in the toolbar. It opens up the character and paragraph dialog box, and then click on this grid and select faux italic. And there you go. It simulates it so nice. And then if you want to customize it, you can just select the beautiful and probably make it a little reddish, something like that. And to make the text bump out of the photo, then you can add a gradient. So let's add a gradient. Okay, not a gradient map. And we're going to choose a color on the left as black. Let's choose black. Okay. Take away the right. We don't need the right inside. Oh, I kind of shouldn't have deleted that. So this one is for the opacity. I want to bring the opacity of black to 0. From 100 to 0. All right, that's fine. That works for me. And then what you can do, you can change the scale. So if you take the scale all the way to 1, you see this is very sharp. So let's increase the scale to around let's say 34, 45-ish. I'm going to go with 35. That works for me. And what you can also do once this is open, you can move it. Isn't that so cool? So we're going to keep it at that. Looks interesting. So without text, but with text, adds an extra something to it. It looks amazing, doesn't it? Okay, so anytime also, here's one more tip. We have a lot of time. So if this is kind of misaligned or something, you can just select all of the image by pressing Ctrl or Command A. With the move tool selected, click on these tools to kind of bring it in center. So this is center. I think this is the horizontal center. This is the vertical center. We don't want vertical center. We are fine with that. Control or Command D. We are good to go. You can save it if you want to, but we are done. So let's move over to the next one. All right. So let's move over to gradient maps. And I'm going to show you how to bring in unlimited filters inside of gradient maps. So let's do it. So as the name suggests, the gradient map allows you to map the colors of highlights, shadows, and midtones. Okay, so whatever color you choose, suppose you want to keep yellow in the highlights or red in the shadows, you can do that by using gradient map. So let's look over the first example. I created this very nice effect. So here's the before, here's the after. Let me go ahead and start all over again. So let's go ahead and create a gradient map, and I'm going to show how to bring in unlimited filters. So if you add a gradient map, for the highlights, you can choose a different color, something like that. It makes it black and white. So for the highlights, we have white, and for the shadows, we have black. And gradually, it moves from black to white, and that's why you see it black and white. You can choose this color. So the shadows now become red, and the highlights become green. Okay, makes sense. Now, what you can do, you can use Adobe color themes in here. So you can actually go to Windows, extensions. You have to just close that. Okay, let's close it. Okay, so you have to go to Windows, extensions, and Adobe color themes. Okay, this is a very nice extension for choosing colors and really look into some colors, nice color schemes and palettes. So you can create your own. You can choose a color rule like triad, complementary, whatever. But you can choose a lot from what have been already created. So I'm going to go to explore. And suppose you're looking for a monochrome tone. So you would type in monochrome. And you would hit enter to search. And it comes up with all these palettes. And you can favorite them, do whatever you want. So you can add this to your favorites or add all the colors to swatches. So what we can do here is that I'm going to show you my favorites. So my appreciations, there you go. I have this and I can add probably to this one. Let's take it down a little bit. I had added one nice. I need to search where that is. Maybe we can add. Okay, so this is the one, the monochrome one that I added. Okay, so what you can do, it's very simple. You can add that to swatches. So let's open up swatches, go to Windows and swatches. So here are the swatches. You can reset it if you have added a lot of stuff. You can just save it and reset it. Kind of gets confusing sometimes. So I'm going to go to reset it. Okay. Save changes to the current, and no, I don't want to save it, doesn't matter. Okay, so here is the all reset swatches, and now if you add something, it will be added below it. So suppose I just wanted to add this thing, just click here, add to swatches. All the colors have been added right here. Now you can turn on the gradient map and you can just choose all the colors. So let's close the libraries, don't need it. Okay, so for the highlights, we can choose white. For the midtones, let's click on the midtones and choose a color from right here. Maybe the orange or maybe this color. For a little bit brighter areas, you can take it to the right. Or we can simply click here and pick a color from here while that is selected. So we can choose let's see how that does. And we can, for the dark areas, we can choose this brown. And for this dark area, we can choose this brown. Okay, and we can adjust it to the way we like, but that still doesn't look very interesting. Let me make it interesting for you. What if, hit OK, what if we change the blend mode to something like soft light? Have a look. So here's the before, here's the after. Makes it so much interesting. Now you can play with it, and you don't have to use all of these. So if you don't want to use this brown, you can just take it all away. That's totally upon you. Just press Ctrl or Command Z to bring it back. Z. Okay, you can take away the whites if you don't want it. So it's all on you, how you want to play with it. Okay, hit OK once you're satisfied, and that's how you get access to tons of filters. So let me just open up another one, just for example. So this is kind of a luxury tone that I added, and I'm going to create that for you again. So here's something complex done here, and we will go through all of that. Now I added a little bit of sharpening here. So if you're interested, let me just show you how I did it. Okay, I might not be covering that in the class, but I just want to show that to you. Okay, there we have her. All right, now as you can see, her face is not sharp. So what we can do is we can make a copy of this thing. Okay, and then I'm gonna go a little bit destructive on this. I know this might not be the most amazing way to do it, but I'm just gonna simply add a radius of like 2.7, change the blend mode to overlay, and kind of increase its sharpness. Maybe just double it up to increase it a bit more. And then I'm gonna group both of them, select both of them, press Ctrl or Command G. I'm gonna take a brush, and then first of all, let's create a mask. Hold the Alt or Option and click on the mask button to create a negative mask. Now, black hides, white shows up. Take the brush, make sure the foreground color is white. Just paint on the subject to bring the sharpness just to the subject. Okay, now only the subject is sharp. It's too harsh. So I'm going to decrease the opacity. Keep it at, yeah, that works. Okay, now, well, let's apply that again. What was it? Gradient map. There we go. And this time I want something luxurious. So if you'd go to Windows and then Extensions, Adobe Color Themes, or you would simply, oh, that icon is gone actually. So sometimes you can just keep it right here, and whenever you want it, you can just click it there and get access to that. You can type in luxury and search it. I've already saved my favorite one, I guess. So I actually have saved, let me just check. I think it is, yeah, this one. I love this one. So I'm going to add that to swatches. Okay, and let's open up the gradient. Let's add, say on the right hand side, let's add this color. On the left hand side, let's add that color. Hit OK. You can just have two colors. It just doesn't matter. Okay, for this side, you can have that color, and you can just gradually select the colors that you want. This doesn't look okay. This is for the dark areas. Yeah, that looks amazing. You can always check in the brightness level. So if you double click on it, you'll see the brightness level is 38. Okay. On the left hand side, it should be lower. On the right hand side, it should be higher. On the right hand side, as you can see, it's 94. It's brighter. So if you juggle it all up, if you keep this to the right and that to the left, the image will look very, very strange. We don't want that happening. Okay. So you want the brighter ones. Whoops, I messed it up. So you want the brighter ones on the right and the darker ones on the left. Okay, there we go. We deleted that. Okay, hit OK. Now it kind of looks a little strange, but wait till we change the blend mode to say soft light, and it begins to look really great. So all these distractions, let's just bring it aside. So here's the before, here's the after. And as I said, if you want to just remove any color, remove it. You are the master here. Also, you can even change colors if you want to. You're going to keep the saturation and the brightness the same. On the hue, you can change it to something like purple to make it even more interesting, and you can take this away. So that's one more amazing look there. All right, so hit OK. There we go. Let's close it. So here's the before, here's the after with that look. If you think it's too much, you can always decrease the opacity. Isn't that interesting? I know that is. Okay. Now here's the problem. When you add it, if for example this thing, it affects the skin, and we don't want to affect the skin so much. So we would click on the mask, take the brush, and just with black paint on the skin. I know it looks too bad, but wait for it. Okay, simply wait for it. Now I know we did a very quick job here. Okay, there we go. Now we don't want skin to be so much erased from this. So I'll just open up the mask properties. Make sure the mask is selected. Go to Windows and make sure properties is checked. Inside of the properties, this is the mask property. Click here, opens up the mask properties, and then we can decrease the density. Density is like the opacity of the mask. As you begin to increase it, you see it gray. It's more and more hiding as you increase it. Totally hidden, unhidden. So I'll just increase it a little bit to this level to make it natural, and there we go. It's not affecting the skin so much. So that's something which we can look out for. Yeah, and those are the only two examples we might be covering. Okay, so let's move over to hue saturation. Okay, let's have a look at it. Hue saturation is so great. I mean, it's so useful. It totally blows my mind every time I use it. I have a lot of additional examples for you to look over, to download and look over it. So let's go over this thing. Let's open up the first example and let's understand how this thing actually works. Let's go ahead and close it. We don't need that anymore. Let's understand how the hue saturation adjustment layer works. So here we have a hue saturation adjustment layer, and in the background image, it's just a normal rainbow showing every color. So let's go ahead and delete it. Let me just show how to create one. So click on the adjustment icon and choose hue saturation. That's all there is. I'm going to stick up the properties right in there. Okay. Now, if you change the hue changes. It looks like moving because it has all the colors. So the hue of this one changes to the next one. This one changes to the next one. So as you move, wow, that's a nice animation, by the way. Saturation, black and white, all color. Lightness, bright, dark, simple stuff. But this is simple stuff. What if you just want to affect one area of it, say the greens? So you can choose the greens, and that way only the green is affected. You can move the hue, see, only that area is affected. You can change the saturation of that particular area and the lightness of that area. Now, I wanted to show you something really, really interesting. Let's reset all of it. you can manually select which shade of green do you want to select. Okay, so if you choose greens and you move the hue, see, only these areas are being affected. What if I want to just affect this area right in there, just this area? I'm not talking about the blue, something in between, or just this part of the greens, just a narrow part of the greens. You can do it. Let's reset it. First of all, with the hand tool, you can select the greens. Now the greens are selected. Increase the hue, increase the saturation, just to identify which area has been selected. And then see the range right here. This is the range of green that we have selected. It's all in here. So the top shows the color spectrum of the entire image, and the bottom is the result. So when we change the hue, see the bottom one changes in this area. So we can just move this area to which color we are selecting. So for example, we want to select the shade. We can make the selection narrow by making it narrower, something like that. As you can see, the edges are very hard. So we want to select this area. Now, watch this carefully. The selection is harsh, right? It's very harsh. What if you want to make the transition smooth between the area that is selected and the area that is not selected? Very, very simple to do. Just at the end, you'll find some extra sliders. You'll just pull it up from that side, pull it up from that side. Those are some extra. And if you want to move the entire thing, hold from the center and then move. Make sense? Right. Now let's apply it. Let's see how this can be applied. So we're going to open some more. It's the recording application that I use. Okay. So you can use it to change colors. Now you would be very much excited to see this. If we go to hue saturation, and let's say we choose this orange color right here, we change everything and we want to make sure every area is selected. So we'll just make it very narrow. Okay, that's the process. Make it very narrow, and let's make it big so that I can show you, and holding it becomes easier. So I'm going to make it very narrow and even move the sliders inside. And just when the area is selected, I'll stop and I'll extend it till whole of the area is selected. Okay, still a couple of areas are left. Don't worry about that. So go from the left. Okay, those areas are selected as well. Now let's make it smooth. We made it smooth from there. We made it smooth from here. Now there are a couple of other areas which are orange as well at the top and at the bottom. Don't worry about that. We can mask it out. Now bring it back to normal. 0 and 0. Let's select it 0 and 0. Now there is very less ways of turning any color black and white. And here's the most exciting thing. You can of course change the color to whatever you like. You can of course change the saturation, but you can make it totally black and you can make it totally bright, totally white actually, and still have it look realistic. Have a look. Whoa, it's black. And if you take it to the right, lightness, it's white. It's so cool. See, there's a little bit left there, so maybe we might have to extend it just like that. Okay, so isn't that so very cool? You can make any color black and white. Wow. So what you can also do, you can make some designs. For example, you want to take it to the left. Of course, if you want to apply some color, for example, let me show that to you first. For example, you wanted to apply this red, maybe just something like that, increase the saturation like this, and then you might have to just mask it in right here. So select the mask, press Ctrl or Command I to invert it. You would take the brush, and you don't have to be accurate here. Just take the brush, make sure the foreground color is white, and just paint in over this thing. And it'll be good to go. Okay, that way the above area is not affected. Okay, so we are good, and here's the before, here's the after. What you can also do, let me just turn the lightness all the way back down. Not this one, it looks really bad, makes it black. We want to select the reds. It was in the reds, yes. Alright, so now inside of the mask you can actually take the brush and literally make some certain nice effects. Brush a little bigger, make it a little harder, and you can literally make designs or do whatever. You can use the pen to take black and maybe create something like that, and you get the idea what I'm doing here with this thing. Or you can simply select the pen tool, or let's do something. Let's create a group out of it. Okay, group, and let's negative mask. Hold the Alt or Option, click on the mask button. Now we just want to make it visible right here. So what we will do, we can choose the pen tool and make some designs. Click. I'm doing it very quick, guys. You can check the finished one for a better result, right? Something like that. Looks interesting. Right click in here and make selection. I just want to add some feather of say 1, hit OK. And then in this, make sure the white is the foreground color and Alt backspace or Option delete. There you go. You can create something like that to really make your stuff better. Now at the top we have done a little extra, so we'll just select the brush and just erase it off with black. There we go. You can be a little careful there. Okay, we have done it. So you can just make amazing designs here as well. So I've done already one for you. Just wanted to show you this. See, simple stuff. Okay, so you can really customize your stuff right using that. So one of the great uses of this is that I think I've just the finished versions. Okay, you can really remove the color cast. So this is the after. Be surprised when I show you the before. Here is the before. It's so, I mean, there's so much green color cast and you can easily remove it. How easy was that? So you can select, let's delete it. Let's start do it all over again. Hue saturation. You would do the same with the hand tool. You would click on the green area that you want to remove. So this is green, I guess. I hope it shows yellow, but yeah, it's moving, leaning towards yellow a little bit. Change the hue, change the saturation, and then we're gonna make it narrow, very narrow. We're gonna move it. I always show this example because it's difficult to find the wrong images. And make it smoother, bring everything back to normal, and then you can move the hue and maybe select a little more and take down the saturation. So that's how you kind of remove it before, after. So easy was that. Okay, let's close this thing. Let's close all, file, close all. We don't want to save it, nope. All right, example 4, same stuff I've done, I just wanted to show you. Okay, so this is interesting. You can just clean the tanning off. So I think it was the reds, yes. So all we did here, let's bring it back to normal. First of all, that color was selected using the previous method. Increase the lightness. Now, as you increase the lightness, it kind of takes away the saturation. So you would also have to increase the saturation. And that's how you take care of the tanning. So before, after. All right, let's have a look at the next one. Let's see what we have done. We have done the same thing. Now, sometimes what's going to happen is, so here's the before with all the green tint. We remove that, but the green tint still remains on this side. So we added one more hue saturation adjustment layer and selected that greens and then removed it again. So sometimes you might have to add multiple hue saturation layers as well. So it might be in the, is it in the greens? I think it's falls under the yellows. So I did one more time. So it was without that. One more time you got to do it. It's too much, a little bit of it. And if you want, you can take away the saturation. All right, makes sense. So those are all the examples. Now I have some Photoshop actions for you. You can download them, and couple more tips, very quick ones. Let's go over them. And this is for removing blemishes. I just wanted you to have a look at this. Now, what I'm going to show to you, don't show that to the model. The best moment to show a picture to the model is after you have done all kinds of retouching and really made her look amazing. Then it's great because people like to be shown beautiful, and that's what I do. I don't want to see my own photo in this. So that's it. Sorry so much, Khaleesi. So here's what it is. If you turn this on, have a look. You see, are you surprised, Phil? I did it with my face and it looked so scary. She looks decent. With my face, it was so scary that I don't want to, what do you call it? I don't intend to make you unconscious of the shock. All right, so once you turn that black and white, once you turn this on, you see all the blemishes very, very clearly, right? So what was it inside of black and white? Well, let's understand this for a moment. She has very less blemishes, so we see very less of it, but sometimes some images have a lot of blemishes, and that's natural. So blemishes are red, right? It's more leaning towards red. What if we can make the reds darker? Well, that's easy. So add a black and white adjustment layer, and we want to take away all the distraction. So simply add a black and white adjustment layer, and there you have the luminosity control of everything, reds, yellows, greens. So you can take the reds all the way to the left or a little bit depending upon the skin tone, and then control the yellows accordingly. I'm going to keep it at that. That kind of helps. Now you can create a new layer in between these two, and make sure you choose the whatever you like. Let's choose the regular healing brush tool, my favorite, and current and below. We don't want to choose all layers. We don't want to take black and white into consideration while we are sampling. Current and below, so that this layer and the background layer, any layer which is below it, combination of all those layers. So I'm gonna sample by holding the Alt key and the Option key. Click on in here and paint it right there. Right? Sample, paint. It makes it so much easier to see it. There you go. Sample, paint, sample, paint. There are blemishes you wouldn't see without that adjustment layer, right? So before, after, cleared some blemishes. So if you turn this off, you see there are some blemishes it's so much difficult to see. So that's a tip to remove the blemishes. It makes stuff easier. And the last one is the vignette. And I'm tired, I have to say. I'm really tired. Okay, so let's start it from the start. Example 1. So I'm going to show you how to add some very interesting vignettes. Let's go ahead and close all of these distracting stuff. Okay. All right. So to add a vignette, I mean, if you have a lens that adds a lot of vignette, that adds vignette. But if you want to add vignettes creatively, this is the way. So let's add a curves adjustment layer. Okay. Take this down. Make it darker like that. Okay. All right, cool. Now, you can select the mask, take the brush, make sure it's big, make sure it's hard. So make sure it's hard. Make sure the foreground color is black. Press D to reset the swatches, X to toggle between them. And then flow and opacity at 100, and you would dab once on her face. Okay, or wherever you want to capture the attention. Press Control or Command D. And then you can adjust it the way you like it, just like a spotlight, right? And if you want, you can also do this. Right click here and choose Distort. And you can distort it like a spotlight. Something like that. And my laptop fan just kicked in. Okay, there we go. Looks interesting. Now select the mask. Open up the mask properties, go to File, Windows, and then Properties. It shows up the properties. I'm going to stick it in right here. We made it large for hue saturation. Now it looks bad. Let's make it smaller. Okay. Simply increase the feather. So this is like the normal, vignette. So here's the before, here's the after. Now keep in mind that you can select the mask, press Control or Command T again. You can still adjust it the way you like it. Isn't that cool? Now if you want to add some oomph to it, double click here. You're going to take that away a little bit to add from the shadows to add some more texture. Don't go too much, a little bit. See, isn't that interesting? Now if you want to add some lights and stuff, you can add a curves adjustment layer, one more curves. Whoops, I didn't mean to do that. Let's add one more curves and let's increase the brightness. We want to limit it to some areas. So like that, and you can just double click on the right hand side of the layer and take it away from the dark areas like this. Keep it something like that, and then hit OK. Select the mask, press Control or Command I. Take the brush, make sure it's big, make sure it's soft, and then all you need to do, you need to dab in with white like that. You see that texture, amazing texture it adds. Now of course you want to take it away from the skin, so you would make the brush smaller. With black, you would just paint on the skin, take it away from there. There we go. Interesting. Look. So here's the before, here's the after. So isn't that interesting? So I already did it. Let's see how I did previously. So here's the finished results. I'm going to open that up. And I used a different technique in here. And I'm going to show that to you as well. This is also an interesting technique. So here's what we did right now. And here's what we did earlier. Now there's a very interesting technique that I used in this, and I just wanted to show you that as well. And that is this. So let me just take that off. And we can do this. We can create a new layer, and that adds a nice effect as well. Take the brush, make sure the foreground color is white. So we're gonna paint it with white. Just dab with white like that. Okay? It adds a light, something like that. And then what we can do, we can double click on the right hand side and we can take it away from the shadows like this. Hold the alter option. We learned the blend if stuff. Just play it like that, adds very nice contrast. Then you can create a mask and just erase her like that. And that really makes it a very interesting photo. So it's the before, here's the after. Similarly, let me show you the second example. You can shape the spotlight to whatever you like. You can even warp it inside of the mask and do all that kind of stuff. And maybe you can also, let's just create the shape on a new layer. I mean, let's do it. Probably we wanted something like, you can literally paint in the shape, do whatever you want. I'm gonna start with a circle. I'm gonna make a circle in here, and let's make it an oval. And fill it with any color, doesn't really matter at this point. So fill it with white, Alt backspace, Option delete. And let's decrease the opacity to see which areas are being affected. And you can control it the way you like it. I mean, it's much more easier to work on it on a separate layer and then apply it later. You can apply liquify to it, do all those kinds of stuff. And now, let's Control or Command T, right click in here and choose warp. Let's warp it out. Make it a little more interesting. Like that. Well, that is interesting. You can drag it, you can make it a little narrower like that. And it looks very interesting. Now you can kind of move it. And also what you can do, instead of adding feather there, you can add a, go to Filter, Blur Gallery, Tilt Shift. Okay. Now, if we increase the blur, see what happens. Okay. See, it didn't blur this area in the middle. It blurred the outside. We can use this to our advantage. We can just move it in the direction of the light. And then what we can do, we can move it right here. And from here, we'll start the blur. And the blur will go till that area. So let's increase the blur. So it's totally blur out on that area, and in this area it's a pure spotlight. So it really looks very interesting. So we can, okay, that is interesting. I like it. So once you're satisfied with that, hit OK. Now I have a very nice one. It's applying the blur. It's a slow filter, guys. Yeah, let's chat a little bit. How are you? Where are you from? What's happening? And by the way, guys, if you have any questions, do let me know. My email is unmesh@piximperfect.com, and just mention Photoshop World in the subject and I'll get back to you. Okay. All right. I know it's kind of boring. Okay, there we go. Now what we can do, you could have done this all inside of the mask, but it's much more simpler for me to do it that way. Now let's add a curves adjustment layer and take it down, something like that. And make a selection of it. Hold the Control or Command, click on it. It makes a selection of that. And then we would select the mask. Okay, let's turn it off. We don't need it anymore. Foreground color black, Alt backspace. You see how awesome that is. And if you want, you can move it like that. Amazing, isn't it? Now if you want to top it off with some extra blur, you can add some extra blur to it. Whoops. All right, there we go. Okay, so you can add some extra blur if you want to, or you can keep it at the spotlight effect. And now you can add that extra, maybe you can turn this on, right? And do the blend if stuff that we did with that extra stuff. Now you can like move it. Okay, so we kind of lost it. Okay, so let's apply a little more. do it. Maybe remove it from the sides and the skin. Take the brush smaller. I created a mask and remove it from his skin. Make it bigger. Or shirt. Yeah, it looks interesting. So here's the before, here's the after. Applying that. Maybe you want to make it even more softer. So to the right and to the left. First of all, let's move it. It's kind of, I applied it. Move it like this. And as you can see, just the mask moved as well. If you don't want to move the mask, you can just click on this button. Then if you move it, the mask still remains at the same place. I can make it smaller if you want to kind of focus that. And there you go. And if you want to decrease the opacity, you can do that as well. So that's something which we can consider doing. Yeah. And let's turn this off, turn this on, see how that looks. Come back to the mask and probably we'll paint a little here with white. Okay. There you go. So that's something which you can also do. And that finally wraps up the entire thing. So these are all the folders, all things, stuff is downloadable. So you can download all of them and see how, just play with them. And I hope this stuff session and everything helped you. Thank you so much. You are really a dedicated student. I really am thankful to you that you watched this video. And you can skip into any area that you want, and you can just download the Photoshop actions and the PSDs. I hope they help you in some way or the other. Thank you so much for being with me. I really appreciate you. And probably I'll see you in my next session, class, video, live stream, or wherever I happen to connect with people, or maybe in person. So really looking forward. Till then, stay tuned and make sure that you keep creating. So this is how I stop the recording. I'm not going to edit that out this time.